let's hope I remember how it works. Here we go.
Mr. Allen, I think we're it. So if you want to sit at the table.
So what am I?
That's fair.
That's a good question.
So we got an email from Dr. Abear like 20 minutes before we all left that he is taking precautions for COVID.
He is not feeling well today.
Okay.
So he was like, still come on out, and he wanted us to ask you questions. One about what you've been doing right now, your history, and just your interactions with the city of Opelika and everything in between.
Okay.
The class project is we're working with, I can't remember what the Heritage Committee Chairman's name is. We're trying to fill in some of the blanks for the early history of the NAACP here in Opelika and Lee County.
Okay.
And Dr. Abear thought it would be a good idea for us to speak with you as a distinguished member of that organization. You always start with a compliment.
Yeah.
So that's what
Let's tell the truth, though.
Yeah. I'll put it this way: I don't know any different at this point, so we'll go with that.
All right.
I think a good place to start off would be if you're a member of the NAACP.
I'm a member of the NAACP. I'm the president of the J.W. Darden Foundation, which is this building here, and it was this just to let you know where you are. This house was built by the very first Afro-American doctor in Opelika in 1901, I believe, something. I can get you the exact date. And he too was affiliated with the NAACP. And the NAACP started, years ago, and of course it went defunct, so to speak. And about 3 years ago, my brother and a group of people decided that there was a need to, to start all over again. Not necessarily start all over again, but to reestablish the branch. And my name, like I said, is George Allen. I've been in Opelika for 75 years, which means I was born here. So. and I've had an opportunity to see a lot of changes in Opelika. A lot of things happened where the NAACP was very, very, very needed, so to speak, because of some of the things that the minority or African American had to endure. And one would be equality, desegregation, job opportunities, education opportunities, all of the things that may have been denied the African American before the civil rights movement. So I didn't necessarily participate in that, but I was around when that happened as well. So the NAACP played a great part in voters registration and just equal job rights is one of the things that they were strong in, where they made sure that not just African American got an opportunity for jobs, but had an opportunity, not because of them being African American, because they qualified to have them. And that was the biggest thing, not necessarily looking for a handout, but an opportunity. So that's one of the major reasons why the NAACP, and that's a national organization that's been around for years. So that's basically what it is, and I'm sure since it's been reestablished in the last 3 years, you may have seen some news articles where they're trying to do some things or express their interest in equality and justice.
So I'd like to start off with two questions going way back.
Okay.
And I know this is going to be when you were a very young man, and I don't expect you to speak to the NAACP in Lee County directly, but just sort of the environment for Lee County at the time. I looked through about 10 years of the old Opelika Daily News. 1st of June 1964, banner headline, state has to drop its ban on NAACP operating.
Right.
So I started there and went forward 10 years, and the Opelika newspaper covered NAACP in Huntsville, Birmingham, Mobile, Montgomery, Huntsville, New Orleans, Wetumpka, Eufaula, but not a single word about the NAACP in Lee County. Now, we know it was organized here, but the paper had nothing about it.
No.
Was that, do you think, them just intentionally overlooking it, trying to ignore the problem? Were they actively not covering the organization?
Well, if I can recall correctly, the old Black Auburn News was never news. It was always history, really, because they were just editing what they've read in other newspapers. So, and I don't know if they had a local editor here that could cover the things unless it was, something big. And I'm sure they would come from other cities versus having an editor here in Opelika. And that's why probably Opelika Auburn News is just recorded a printed information from other newspapers.
Second question, then I'll get out of the way. Opelika is a mill town.
Right.
It was a pepperell mill town.
Right.
Pepperell owned the houses, they owned the schools, they owned the church, they owned the stores. And the textile industry in the South was notoriously one of the most segregated industries there was. And it wasn't until the Civil Rights Act passed that they even considered desegregating the mills. Do you think that caused any special problems for Opelika? And I noticed that in 1965, Pepperell was forced to include its school in the county desegregation plan. If they didn't want to, they were literally forced to bring their school into compliance. Do you think that caused any special problems for integration and equality in Lee County?
Well, I think so, because they had their own village, which is not far from here, where they have own house, own school, and only whites lived there. So evidently they were not interested in the minority of the black population in Opelika, because I cannot remember blacks being a part. Now, blacks did work at the mill, but they didn't attend their school, they didn't attend their church, and they didn't live in their home. So if that would let you know, they were not interested in the overall well-being of the blacks like they were the whites that worked in the textile industry.
I was just curious if the single biggest economic force in the city being so dedicated to maintaining, and they refused to even talk about it until they were forced to by the federal government.
Well, I mean,
what kind of impact that would have on the local government as they move forward?
Well,
and I know you were 12,
before civil, it was just not a thing, just appeasing blacks or making them equal. It was not a thing. We give you your school, we give you your community, you deal with that and be satisfied, so to speak. And but as years passed and we saw how things were changing, and of course they trickled down to the South. And the NAACP, they were very instrumental in getting the former government changed to where they had a commission at large, and they got where they had wars, and where they could get black representation. And that was very, very big, and it caused some very, very big problems, so to speak. And it's hard to, I would put it this way, Opelika made some great strides from the early 50s to 60s. I'm just telling you, the administration have done great, and I'm sure have done it already in other areas as well. But people, the government itself did not make changes until they were forced to make changes through the Civil Rights Act and just the pressure, the protest, and none of that changed on its own that I can recall. It was forced to happen, and the NAACP was very instrumental in pushing for the Civil Rights Act, and we even had protests here in Opelika. We had sit-ins at the little restaurants and things of that nature. We even after the former government was changed, we had black city workers, but they were not part of the retirement program. You know, that could, and that was a big issue that the city of Opelika and NAACP had to deal with, because that just wasn't right. You know, they did the work and they had none of the benefits. So these are the type things that the NAACP dealt with.
I'm sorry, I should have introduced myself. My name is Lee McInnes. I'm a second-year master's student,
Okay.
and my focus is on Southern history.
Okay.
So,
okay.
and I guess we'll all introduce ourselves as we ask.
As you ask questions.
I just suddenly heard my
I had no idea what this was going to be. I would have been a little better prepared.
Oh, no,
That's
that's
perfectly fine.
Yeah.
We were also expecting to have a person here.
Yeah.
It was like, all right, he set this whole up.
Everyone was expecting something different than what
Yeah,
happened.
okay. Well, hopefully we'll get something out
Oh
of it.
yes, absolutely.
Well, my name is Patrick Ward. I was kind of wondering, you were describing earlier, when they did start to implement these new changes in Opelika during like the mid 60s, early 70s, you said there was a lot of problems. I mean, if you wouldn't mind describing what that kind of looked like, especially as a young man growing up here.
Well, the problem was just being accepted. You know, they would do things to, like, for instance, when they first desegregated the schools, they had the Darden High, which was considered a black school, which was named after Dr. Darden here, and then of course they had Opelika High. But to just totally integrate, they said we will have Opelika High School South Side and Opelika High School North Side, and give the students a choice of where they want to attend. And of course, you know what would happen. The blacks would continue to go over here, the majority of them, and the whites would go over here. So that was a problem. Then the government had to come and say, no, you can't do that. Either we believe in desegregation, but we also have to integrate as well. So, and that's when they closed the south side of Opelika High, and of course, a lot of the black teachers, once they left Darden High, lost their job because they already had teachers at the high school, which was predominantly all white, and they may have, eventually added one or two in, but never to the extent that it should have. So that was one part of desegregation that was not planned, to where we can make sure that we can place all of the employees that we have here. So that was a loss to the black community, the way that happened as well. So that was just one problem. And of course, they had separate break rooms, and we had to just really protest to get that changed. When the blacks went home for lunch and the whites, they had different places they would go. And these are the type of things that we had to work hard to do. So we're very fortunate not to have any violence. That was very, very unique.
Yeah, especially that it. Wow. Yeah. Well, no, because I'm just like every other city.
Every other city, I'm serious. I cannot recall, a clash between races or anything like that. I can't recall, and I was here.
That's incredible.
At that time. Yeah.
So what grade were you in were you a student still when integration happened?
No, I finished high school in '66.
Okay.
And they supposedly desegregated in '68, I believe. But they didn't totally integrate to like '70, I believe, something to that. Matter of fact, I'm not sure if these exact dates. I can get them to you, but that's that was the area. I finished in '66. It was totally segregated. And I will give you one instance that happened that kind of led to getting our very first black police officers, and that was at a football game in the fall of '66. I remember that because I was in college and I came back for a football game. They had a riot. That was the only. I mean, they had a riot, and that's when people's, all the white policemen beating up on black, and then of course, and some of the blacks retaliated and hurt one of the white police officers, and from that, the Voters League and NAACP sat down and said, we need equal protection from the law as well, and from that they got the very first black police officer, and that was in '68, I believe, 1968.
My name is Mike Smith. I'm a first year grad student here. You talked a little bit about maybe from the time you were, in high school, right after high school, and desegregation and integration of the schools here in Opelika. Would you mind just kind of telling us about your childhood? I think you said you were from Opelika here. Not to be anything super in depth, but anything you'd like to mention about your childhood experiences growing up in a segregated Opelika, Alabama?
Well, because things was expected to be the way that they were at that time, normally something, you get changed based on the result of an action, so to speak. Somebody had to die before you decided, something big had to happen, of course. It appears that's where it happened, but in growing up, segregation, I know when I wanted to go to the movies, I know where I would go. We would go to the same movie. We sat upstairs, they sat downstairs. We went in the back door, they went in the white, and that's just the way it was. So we accepted that up until the late '60s. And you might have a few classes, you throw rocks at us, we throw rocks at you, but that type thing, but nothing major. It was a thing that was accepted. Segregation was accepted here in the South. But, yeah.
My name's Matt. I'm a second year PhD student. I'm interested about the closure of Darden and all that. I know you're a little early, but from what I'm reading about it, they turned Darden into the vocational school. What was kind of like the reaction in the community with turning the school into the vocational school and all that?
Well, that was just a way, just give some of the students another opportunity not to go to
Darden.
Could still go to Darden. And then like when they, I think the state, if I'm not saying the federal government can say you can't even do that. You're going to have to close the school. We're going to have one school, and that's going to be it. We can't keep it segregated by calling it something different. So.
I guess kind of going off that, what was kind of the reaction in the Opelika black community when Darden's closed? Was it kind of okay.
I don't think we were happy that Darden closed, but we were happy to get a better opportunity. Because before, I think George Wallace, I can't remember what year, before he made textbooks free, we kind of got secondhand everything, Opelika High would get to new books and they would send us their used books. So, we were just behind. We were just behind. So things like that, we nothing to do. We had a principal that was over one black principal was over 3 black schools, and he just did the best he could, with what he had to work with, and that's the way things were, and we kind of accepted it up until the '60s.
I know you were a little older than when integration happened, but did you know anyone that when integration happened and they had their sports teams, their club teams at Darden, how did that kind of relationship change when it all got into Opelika?
Oh man, Opelika, I was glad to get some of those athletes. from Darden, because I believe they probably went maybe 10 years without winning a football game, and Darden was winning regularly. So they were kind of
They're glad to get that recruitment.
glad to be able to get an opportunity to compete, but and you still have problems. You got to make sure that the coaches would accept that as well, and some did and some didn't. It's just some things that's happened, but we still had to make sure that we would work on to make sure justice would prevail. Equality, equity, all these things would prevail. But it was interesting. As I look back over it, it was interesting. And
You mentioned you went to college. Where'd you go to school?
at Alabama State in Montgomery. In '66, I was so much. It wasn't that I could go to Auburn, but I will tell you though that my wife, just speaking of Auburn University, she initially started at Tennessee State, which is a predominantly black school as well, and because we got married, had a baby and things, and she kind of quit, and I was still in school. And in 1972, I believe, she enrolled in Auburn, and she had a problem getting in Auburn. Not being an athlete, getting in Auburn was a problem in the early 70s as well. But there was just not an Opelika, but in Auburn. But she was very persistent, and she went on and got her BS and a master's from Auburn. But she had a lot. I would have to go in some classes and sit with her because she was so afraid. They were just not accustomed to having black students. They were accustomed to having black athletes, but they were not really ready for black students. And that was, I'm almost sure, 72. There was very, very few black students, academically students. I hope the athletes are supposed to be academically well, but you know how that works. But
what did the broader community think of Auburn growing up, like the university?
You know what I will tell you this. This is what I would tell people. Nothing to be offensive, okay? I said if Auburn University would play the KKK, I would pull for the KKK. So that's why because my wife had gone there. I saw what she had gone through. So I just had but we initially, she fed at home after a couple of years, and it changed. But I saw a lot of things that she had to endure. I remember we was in one class. I think it was a theater class, and they were getting students to take parts, and the teacher said, "Well, bitches, you just be the pet, the pet dog, the cat, whatever. You don't have a part. You just be the pet." There's things of that nature, so that you could get a little. And everyone wasn't like that. We met I met a couple of professors that invited her over to their home and would just apologize to some of the things that she had to endure, but that was an experience as well. It had nothing to do with the NAACP, but you asked me about what was happening in this area during that time.
Hey, my name is Gabby. I'm a first-year master's student, and I was wondering if the way that you feel about Auburn, is it kind of the same mentality? No, not
I'm serious. I'm an Auburn fan, and I tell you what. Now, that that everyone would say my brother was a diehard Auburn fan. Even during segregation, he would go. Auburn. They had a tunnel, I believe. They had a metal. What do you call it?
Like a metal detector?
No, just a metal stand.
Bleacher.
Yeah. Where they would go, where blacks would go and sit, and he would go. He was an Auburn fan, and I don't know why. I asked him why. He said, "I just like Auburn. It's home, and I like football, and I'm gonna pull for the closest team," and that's what he did. And he died about 4 or 5 years ago, and I said, well, I told my family I'm gonna take his spot. I'm gonna be a diehard by default. I'm gonna be a die, but that's just something different. But there are some people that love Auburn as well. And there are some people who worked at Auburn and had good experiences, and some that didn't. But, you know, that's life. But I would think that even though they were forced to do, Opelika and Auburn was forced to do certain things, it still came out for the better.
Did your brother attend Auburn University as well?
No.
Just-
My younger brother did. He finished, yeah, but the one I was talking about that's deceased now, my younger brother finished Auburn University as well. My wife and my brother.
Do you know about what years your younger brother attended Auburn University?
Well, I tell you, I'm 6 years older than him, so I finished in '66, so he was in late '70s, I guess. Yeah.
Did he have any of the same encounters, given that 6 or 7 year difference between him and your wife? Do you remember him speaking of any of the same encounters at Auburn University?
No, I do know even when the very first time that he was one of the ones that went to, I think he was in junior high when they desegregated. He chose to go to Opelika Junior High. He didn't choose to stay at Darden. He was one of the very, very few. You know, you have 3 or 4 that's, I'm gonna go over here and compete. You know, I'm gonna let him know. And he was one of the ones that he was a member of the NAACP when he was young, very young. He was the one that decided to get it back functioning. He was the one. Billy Allen was the one that got it back functioning. And if I'd known, I could have had him here because he would be a nice fellow to be able to talk to as well. As a matter of fact, he's Dr. Abear knew him very well. He's the one that I think met with Dr. Abear to get him to look into doing this as well.
So when I went to Auburn the first time in 1980,
Okay.
Auburn and Opelika were separate. I mean, there was a physical distance,
Right.
and there was a psychological and emotional distance. I mean, besides the fact that Auburn ended at the mall,
Right.
and there was a deal of space down Pepper Parkway where there was no development before you got to the city of Opelika. And Mooresville Road just ran out into the woods.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
there was no houses out once you got past the interstate. As somebody who was, you know, you said you were in both cities. I mean, you went to the university with your wife. Did you feel a difference in? What did you just feel a difference in how? You said in Opelika everybody sort of understood what the rules were, and you just is what you expected. When you went to Auburn, did you feel like there was those same expectations, those same rules applied, or did you have to be more careful when you went to Auburn? Were things different?
You mean went to Auburn for what particular?
For whatever reason you might. I mean, did when you were just in Auburn, did you have to be more on your guard? Was it more relaxed? Was it different than it was when you were in Opelika?
Well, the only difference, Opelika and Auburn just didn't get along. You know, you just don't go to Auburn. Casually go to Auburn. They didn't casually come to Opelika. They did, but now the only jobs that were in the area was in Opelika because the only thing that was in Auburn per se was Auburn University. So if you worked in the textile industry or Ampex or the tape industry, you had to come to Opelika. But other than that, it was really a split between the two cities at that time. So you could, and you just didn't go unless you were going for a particular reason.
So it wasn't a race issue, it was an Auburn-Opelika?
It was an Auburn-Opelika issue.
Okay.
It was an Auburn-Opelika issue.
I was, as an Auburn student, when my daughter came to school here 30 years after I did, she was in Opelika all the time.
Yeah.
And she was like, what did you do in Opelika when you were here? And she couldn't believe it. I think I went to Opelika twice.
That's what I'm saying. It just didn't happen.
In 5 years. I don't remember.
But it's totally different now.
Yeah.
It's totally different. But then they just didn't mix. They would come to work and they would leave, and that was it.
I I'm Tori Shannon.
Okay.
Right, sorry. Sorry, cutting like that. With going all the time about Auburn and Opelika, I had noticed that in some of the newspapers, at least once, there was a mention of the Auburn NAACP mentioned in terms of Drake High School. How did both branches interact at all or not interact?
Now that I can't answer, I don't know, but I remember that for some reason they decided to merge and just have a Lee County, which encompassed Auburn and Opelika. In fact, I'm sure they know the year that it happened. I don't know it right now, but we can find out. I'm sure that Dr. Abraham probably knows as well. But I guess they just saw a need, like, you know, to merge and have one.
So you mentioned how your brother was one of the first integrated students at the Opelika Junior High. What did your parents think of that decision?
Well, he was kind of. They just let him make up his mind.
Yeah. One of the younger siblings.
Yeah. Let him make it. That, you know, they was concerned for his well-being, of course, but they didn't try to keep him from doing it. He that's something he wanted to do.
Was there any significant events or moments or, you know, movements that you can remember him being a part of during his time with the NAACP?
No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
But I will tell you, seriously, we'll do this again, and I'll make sure he can be here. Like when Dr. Abraham, he'd be here, and my brother could be here. Maybe we could even invite two others that was very instrumental in the local NAACP.
That may get some extra credits.
Well, I'll make sure I set that up for you.
You mentioned that you became a member of the NAACP maybe a little bit later on after your younger brother. Were you influenced by him and are motivated to join the NAACP because of your brother?
Yeah, he said I should.
He said you should.
He was very instrumental.
And when was that? When did you join?
I may have joined when it was in effect before, but I never attended a meeting, anything like that. But of course, he was the one said, look, if you're gonna be a member, you need to be involved. So that's kind of changed. I can't remember, and I'm almost sure I was a member before. That just was more or less on paper.
So you're a city councilor.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been on the city council?
This is my third year.
Okay.
To be honest with you, I ran 30 years ago and wasn't ready, just thought decided something to do, but I've become more involved in the city and things of that nature. A lot of people say, ask me to run, and I said, well, look, I don't know about that. They say, you're going to do it. It's been very rewarding, so to speak, but before then, I taught school for a couple of years at Opelika Tech. It was Opelika Tech at that time. And then, of course, even working year round, you made about $7,000 a year. I got a wife and a child, you know, she's in school. And Liberty National Insurance came by and said, well, they're looking there for the very first black agent they didn't have. And I talked with them about that, and I accepted that position. And I worked with them for like 18 years. And never really got a promotion. And a promotion would be from an agent to a manager. And a manager did. He was over, say, 5, 10, 8 agents, and he made money based off what they did. Okay, well, you know, I've been at this for 15 years. Wow, now I had probably one of the top agents in the company, especially here in Opelika, and but you know, why I've not been considered for a promotion, and they said that at that time, yeah, I'm not sure none of you remember when agents would go to homes and collect. You remember that?
I remember that. I remember that.
And that's what happened, you know. And the area I had, of course, was black, and And some of them had black and white, but only I only had the black. And I said, well, you know, it's time. And they said, well, they didn't think that whites were ready for blacks to come to their home on that basis. So I took them to court. And of course I won. We went all the way to federal court in Birmingham, and they said that, you know, it was discriminatory for what they were doing. And they make me an offer. Back then it wasn't nothing, but the fact that I wanted to let them know that they were wrong, and that's what happened. So that was my big deal with dealing with injustice and that type of thing. And,
do you remember what year that was? Maybe.
I think that probably 1989, 90.
Can you tell us a bit about your role as being a council member? Like, what is that? Like, what does a day look like for you?
A day? Oh man, I almost missed phone calls. People really don't understand what we can do, or what people will call you. My landlord is going up on my rent, and he won't make any repair. I have nothing to do with them. That's between you and your landlord. We can't do anything. I mean, but they're always, well, they didn't pick up my trash. They didn't do this. But now, those are type calls that I get. But mainly what we are to do is the mayor, the city administrator, the city planner, the city engineer, those are the ones that make all this. They come up with the plans of what's best for Opelika. And of course it has to come to us to approve. That's our major, to approve what the city officials put before us. And not, you know, and sometimes there are some things that we don't understand, or some people have called us and say, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, and we have to, you know, do a little research to find out which way is best for the city. And the biggest thing the bigger thing that people don't understand, my job, even though I represent a certain area, my job is do what's best for the city. A lot of times that don't necessarily coexist, because you know everybody want what they want now, then instant gratification. I voted for you, here's what I need you to do for me. But it's very rewarding when you can help people, and Opelika is not a bad place. We've had some good administrators, so you know, and I tell them that all the time. But our biggest thing is to just check up on them and make sure that they are doing what's best for the city to the best of our ability. They have more experience than we do, so we have to really rely on them to make the right decisions. Any of you have been in politics before?
Yes, sir.
Under no form, not even the what do they call it? The student council?
I got the student council.
Yeah.
From what I hear, they're gonna delegate me to somewhere else, and I'm all right.
So you're, like myself, you're a man who had already had a career. You were reaching an age where if you had just retired.
Right, I wasn't retired.
Nobody would, if you just stopped and taken your time and enjoyed yourself, nobody would have said anything to you.
Right.
And yet you ran for city council. What made you make that decision?
Just another challenge, so to speak. And I've always worked with people. I've always been in sales. I sold insurance like for maybe 18, 19 years. And I sold automobiles for probably the same length of time. So I love people. I just do. And anything that I can do to help them, I'm willing to do it. And I've never, even though people don't believe it, I never did it just for the money. And I guess that's why I could stand it so long.
Two times we've heard 3 years, I think. Something happened 3 years ago. One was you ran and got elected to city council. Second thing that happened, you said, I think 3 years ago, was the NAACP organization in town restarted.
Yeah.
Are those two events in any way related? Was there something going on in the city that inspired you to get involved in politics and showed the need for the NAACP presence here in the city? Was there anything going on? I mean, it was 2020 and there was a lot of things going on in the world at the time. Did those come into Lee County or in the city of Opelika to make you want to get involved and to make people think we still have a need for the NAACP here?
Well, my brother who lives in Atlanta, he owns a little land here in Opelika, and he had problems with the city as to how he should take care of that land. And he had reference to how they did in Atlanta versus what they do in Opelika. And he was not, he felt like the ordinance they have in Opelika is not fair. So, him fight by himself, he felt like he couldn't get anywhere. And he asked about the local NAACP, which was not in existence at that time. And he said, the type felt, I'm going to get it started again because we need one. And I attended some of those meetings, and in doing that, and the lady who had had this position for 27 years decided she was not going to seek re-election. And some of the people, even that's why I said the relationship, some of the people that were in the meeting said, you ought to run,
Mm-hmm.
So it just ended up that way. Not that it was relationship, and I am more active in the NAACP now that he's not the president than I was when he was, and I was in this position as well. People are
Right.
I don't want them to think that I'm trying to double dip, so to speak, or try to be a spy for the NAACP. So I was just almost inactive when he was the president. I've become more active this year. Because I feel, even though it's an old organization, I still feel like it's a need. And very few people have not heard about the NAACP.
What do you think the need for the NAACP is for right now in Opelika and Lee County? Like, do you see a series of things that they need to be involved in right now, or is it that just 2020 happened?
Just a presence.
Mm-hmm.
Just no particular problems but every once, it's going to come up, and you just want to know either the NAACP is supporting this or they're against that. That's just the politics that's involved. They say they are nonpartisan, but they, we all are to some degree. But that they're not working on any particular thing because Opelika and Auburn across the board is trying to be fair, I believe, and I truly believe that. But there will be some people that's going to make some bad decisions, and they have to be dealt with. And sometimes it have to be dealt with more collectively than a group of people can accomplish a lot more than one.
So one of the things we've read about in reading about the history of the NAACP is going all the way back to the 20s and 30s. The NAACP, even though it was only 10, 15 years old at the time, it was always seen as being old and conservative.
Right.
And then you move through the 50s and you've got organizations that are more engaged in direct action like the SCLC, SNCC,
Mm-hmm.
CORE, Black Panther Party. Then you come to today and you have BLM, you've got other organizations that are really intensely into direct action.
Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, and the NAACP is still there. They're still filing lawsuits. They're still, working through the courts and working in the system. As someone who's now part of the system, do you see the value in those two different approaches? Do you think one's more valuable than the other? Could there be more coordination between the two?
Well, we live in a world today where conflict is just a way of life. That's it. Democrat, Republican, Independents, millennials, however you want to look at it, that would be conflict. And that's the American way. Now, it's not, it's good. Some ways it's good to have more than having all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. But the NAACP has proven to be not a fly-by-night organization because of its being to perpetuate all during the years and still be relevant all through the years. So let us know it's not. Now, you've heard like the Black Panther, they're gone on, or what's the one Jackson that as well, Push, Operation Push, all these, they kind of fall by the wayside. But the one that's more prevalent has been the NAACP. And a lot of people have said, well, that's old. A lot of young people say that's an old organization. We're moving on from that. But if they really looking at what it stands for, they would understand this. Matter of fact, I think my brother's trying to, if he hadn't established a branch at Auburn University for young students.
What do you think sets the NAACP apart from those other organizations?
It's hard to say, but just looking back at the history, I would say because of the things that they've taken a part in and how they could be an influence on the people that was causing the problem, they have gotten the support that they need. Now they're like all the NAACP is not. They have members they're not all black because they see the need for an organization to still push for equality, and there are inequalities in every aspect of our life, and they would tell you nowadays that if they see inequality, they're not looking, well, this is just black inequality. We go so any inequality, they're willing to fight for, and that's the key thing. If you representing, you standing for what's right, right will prevail. And I just believe that the NAAC, because of the leadership that they've had, because of the support that they've had, it was prevalent 50 years ago, and it's still prevalent today. But a lot of times, we have a lot of younger people say, well, that's all. Like I said, that's been here forever. We need to do something different. And I'm sure you hear that, and even in politics. He's been up there for 40 years. We need to get rid of it. Not whether he's doing what's right or wrong, but the fact that you just feel like we need new ideas. And I tell, because I was old, and the 21-year-old ran against me, I said, yeah, like old folk can't have new ideas, you know what I'm saying? But those are the things, and it's just been, in reading his history and the things that it has accomplished, I think it's something that should be forever in NAACP, because I think it was always been needed. We will never reach that utopian society that we all want. So sometimes we have to be forced to do what's right. That's sad, but sometimes we have to be forced to do what's right. And this is an organization that stands for what's right.
So have you ever been tempted to be involved in one of those, have you ever been involved in one of those more direct action organizations like SNCC or SCLC
No.
or never tried that type of activity was never attractive to you?
No, we I don't know if you remember, even when Dr. King was pushing for nonviolence, you had organizations that say, burn, baby, burn. We can't get what we want unless we take it. You can always have those type, and I'm just a type, and I guess from family history, that before you become part of something, you need to find out what it's about. And in doing that, I've not been in any trouble. I've made some bad decisions, but none that was criminal. So
bad decisions are all right. Permanent bad decisions.
Yeah, right.
Are getting in trouble. That's advice for all you.
Yeah, it is.
You might get too far.
For this, for the Darden High School part, were there any movements that went on here, just like any party at the NAACP that took part here, like when school wasn't in session?
Like here,
Yeah.
not to my knowledge. I can't say not to my knowledge.
I was mostly curious because I was thinking about how rich of the history of the house is, and I was wondering just.
Yeah, but if you noticed, Dr. Dart been like the first position in the area. I'm sure you read, in this house he had meetings with Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, so you know he was a very permanent fellow. And they met and had lunch and dinner here, but for just having a affiliation with the NAACP, I can't say.
One of the things that Dr. Abear emailed us, sporadically this afternoon was, just another emphasis kind of on, businesses and, people working, especially in Opelika, and maybe its relationship to Auburn, especially with the university. Like, do you know if there's, if there's still like university tension that still has to be, or if there's any, difference between, white businesses, black business, or anything like that still happening today, and, if the NAACP is,
No, I will. I think Auburn has its Chamber of Commerce. Opelika has its Chamber of Commerce. And then I think some of the black counties have a black Chamber of Commerce. And some of those members came and tried to recruit black businesses in Opelika, and I think they weren't very successful because they felt like, they were not mistreated being part of Opelika Chamber of Commerce, and they remained there. I don't think that they got very much traction here in this area. So, things we do consider things as being better.
Absolutely.
So that's the only force businesses if I think the NAACP is trying to have workshops to help minority business maybe get loans and to make them more competitive. But other than that, I don't think we've had any serious pushbacks from white businesses or black businesses. It's much better.
Absolutely.
It's much better.
So one of the things we talk about in the history department at Auburn is memory. And we have people that study memory, and it's not just the facts of history, but how people remember history, stories that are passed down. Do you ever run into people your own age, either black or white, that have radically different memories of how life was here in Opelika in the 60s and 70s when you were growing up?
Not radically, but in certain areas, because they had personal experiences that became a permanent part of their memory. Like they may have had a run-in with a particular racist person, or the black, he might have been more blackish, so to speak, and they just kind of clash. And you will find hatred on both sides. I don't like you just because you're white. I don't like you just because. And they would clash that. I mean, they would see things a little differently. But most people wanted to move on. But you still have that today. Some people just will not let go. But and that's where you would have the differences. Is I would take I'm not going to just say candidate XYZ. He's running for office. If he stands not necessarily for what's right, but what I think ought to be, I'm going to support him. It has nothing to do with right or wrong, but what it has to do is he's speaking he's talking about pushing the things that I like. And that's why we have problems. And you're going to have this group over here that's pushing for what I like. We'll take abortion, for instance. That's the big issue. And those issues cause separations. And the same thing with the races, the races. If you believe this and I believe that, that's going to cause separation. So it's deep.
I'm not old enough to remember Alabama when it was segregated. I was born in 1961, so I don't remember the Civil Rights Acts being passed. But I am old enough to remember the tensions that were caused as businesses integrated. When in the department stores, black customers would walk freely through, and I remember hearing comments, even as a 6, 7-year-old. And I talk to people that are a little bit older than me that well, segregation wasn't that bad. And I go, well, that's because you're white. It's easy because you weren't being segregated. And so I do see a lot of difference in memories.
Based on their personal experiences.
And interestingly enough, I've actually talked to some African Americans that have said, well, at least with segregation, we understood what the rules were and what the boundaries were, and we didn't have to worry, if we followed those rules.
We had no problem.
We had no problems. And I've just always found that, to be, as someone who was just barely at the edge of that, and didn't actually see it directly. I heard my folks talk about it a lot. But that's always been something that's very interesting to me.
The majority both knew their boundaries and they just didn't cross them. We knew where we would go to have fun. We knew where we were going. If you wanted to go travel, you get on the bus. You go to the back to get your ticket. When you get your ticket, you go sit in the back. That's just the way it was until one day in Montgomery, young lady said, look, I'm tired and I'm not going to give up my seat. And that just opened their eyes to a lot of people, we shouldn't have to do that. Well, before we was just accepting it and it happens until you get somebody that's brave enough or that want to make changes, that see changes need to be made. And the changes that they pursue are the right changes. And that's conflict. And when people don't want to give up their rights, then you're gonna have conflict. Whether they own them justly or not, they're not gonna want to give them up. And that's the human part of us that we're gonna have to deal with all of our lives. That's two things in us, right and wrong. It's in all of us, and it's just the one that we choose to be dominant.
So you talked about a professional instance where you said, wait a minute, why? This is wrong, and you took your employer to court. Earlier, was there a personal experience you had growing up where you just looked at a segregated Opelika, where you were going to the balcony of the theater and you just asked yourself, why is it like this? Well, I shouldn't have to do this.
Yeah, of course, you might do that, but you might not have the courage to do anything. It's just going to take that special person that has to come along, that has the courage and the fortitude to want to do what's right, not just to make changes, but what's want to do what's right. You take what's that fellow that Stokely Carmichael. He was the one that said, "Burn, baby, burn." He felt like if they ain't gonna let us have none of it, they ain't gonna have none of it. We're just gonna burn it all down. That didn't last long. Dr. King tried to do it the peaceful way, and what he did, persist. It's your intentions of why you're doing something that's going. And I believe in the Lord. He's gonna stand up for what's right. I believe that. So, and Dr. King, he said, we're gonna do this peaceful. We're not gonna fight back. We're gonna let them know they're wrong, and wrong will persist.
I think it's called Fraser's Park. I know researched a little about Auburn's history, about Fraser's Park, which was, I can't remember if it was heavily segregated at the time or not. I think it was. But was there anything similar to that here in Opelika? It was a more of an amusement kind of a place, entertainment kind of place.
No, we didn't have. The very first recreation facility for blacks in Opelika was in 1963, I believe. That was when Covington Rec Center. And when I was growing up, we had nowhere to swim. Every summer we would get a bus and we would go to Hamilton, Georgia, and that was our opportunity to build a swimming pool. Now you could go to the creek, but the whites had it. But No, we couldn't go, so we went to where we could go. And it's like I said, somebody said, look, this is not right. And more of us are followers than leaders. But if you get the right leader, you'll get a lot of followers.
What kind of things would y'all do for fun? Like, where would you go? Like, what kind of activities, stuff like that?
We would make bow and arrows. We'll make pop things you don't know anything about. We would just live by nature. That was it, you know. And see, the part that was so interesting is the fact that all of us was the same, you know. So it wasn't no class system, so to speak, in the black neighborhood. All of us were the same. Now you had some that the mother may have been school teachers and the father may have been, but they still had to live with us. So they were no different. Not that they could go live in a different area. We all went to church together, and it was just like that. And it's just like, I guess, any of you married,
Yeah.
you know the limits for being a spouse, right?
Sure.
Okay, and you accept that. If you're married, you accept that, right?
Yeah, there are things you can do and things you cannot do.
That's what I'm saying. That's it.
That is absolutely correct.
And you accept the things that you can do and you can't do because you're married.
It's sometimes with it's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And when you get to where you can't accept that, that's when you have to make a very, 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 very life-changing choice. Just to separate us, to get a divorce. And that's the same type of things that something have to happen in order for you to realize that we got to make a change. You accept things for so long, it's something will happen. Something have happened in all of our lives that where we saw that we need to make a change. And that's happening in, like you said, in trying to correct injustice. Something would normally happen before. Now I don't know if you know, before what really put a light on the civil rights bill was Bloody Sunday. Now, probably if not Bloody Sunday, we may not have gotten that bill for another 5-10 years. But something drastic had to really happen. It appears as if it shouldn't, but it appears as something drastic had to happen in order for us to seek changes and really fight for changes. And a lot of times, like you say, people say, well, like you said, people say, I don't see nothing wrong. Nothing happened for you to see anything wrong. So that's my outlook. And God makes some people to be a part of that change.
What about when you were a young adult? Were there any places downtown or in the community where y'all would go to hang out?
Not downtown.
Yeah.
It was just you had black clubs in the black area, and that's where you would go. You had a couple of black clubs in Opelika. That's where you go. They had their clubs. That's where they would go. But you knew your boundaries. And no one was looking for problems, so you accepted those boundaries until one person may have come and said, look, I want to go to that club over there. I should have the right to go over there just like he goes. And then somebody said, well, you're right, we should go over there. And that's what causes changes to occur. But somebody got to take the forefront. And I think that's it in anything.
So was there a person here in Opelika that was willing to be that first person to walk into restaurants, walk into clubs?
Yeah, I don't. And I've just, like you said, in conversation, people have remembered. I can't recall the names now, but there were some that was I remember the very first one was a Woolsworth in Opelika. I think they were like well, y'all don't remember this. They had a little, wasn't a restaurant, little food bar, so to speak.
Lunch counter.
Lunch counter,
Yeah.
that's what it was. And,
Yes, I remember War Lunch counter. Y'all listen
how
to
old are you,
Mr.
man?
Al.
I was just kidding. But, and someone said, well, look, I'm gonna go over here. They're gonna serve me. I can't, I've been told the names of the ones who did it, and they, told them they refused. They said, well, we're not leaving until you feed us. And I don't know how the outcome came at that particular time, but that was one of the very first one that happened here in Opelika.
What do you think of the kind of like downtown scene now? Like with all the like new like kind of like breweries and all that?
It's great, man.
Now that sounded like a city councilman answer.
Well, my point is, if I am to do what's best for Opelika, whether I like say best, I'm not gonna say I don't say if I don't drink, I'm not gonna fight against the sale of alcohol, because that's I'm not there to voice my opinion. I'm there to voice the opinion of what's best for Opelika. So I think it's great. Opelika was downtown was just almost at a standstill, and with these people with these new ideas that come in, and it's been it's great. I like it. I really like it. Even like the possibility of getting a what do you call that, medical marijuana distributor here in Opelika. That's
Let me know when that opens up.
what's that?
I got arthritis. We'll be good.
It's a glaucoma.
So it's progress. You got it. I mean, you can't survive without progress. That's it.
Earlier you mentioned the sit-ins. What was the most, I hate to say the word major, but I guess major one that you remember?
The major one that I remember is when they integrated the movies, because my wife now was my girlfriend, and when they say, they closed the back and you went in the front, I said, man, I don't remember what the movie was about. I was so afraid. But nothing happened, but knowing that I was not really welcome there, but we went in, we paid our money, and we sat in to watch the movie, and that was a memory, a good memory for me.
I was going to ask about your memory. What was maybe a joyful memory that you had that came with the integration of school and places of business, and you just kind of alluded to the movie theater. And if you have another one, I'd love to hear that. But then also too, maybe at a younger age when things were segregated, is there a specific memory of you questioning or being really like sad that you couldn't go there or something?
No, but I do have a sad memory. I may have been in about because I was at this school, the East Street School, so I was less than 6th grade, so this was probably in the late 50s. This young man was coming down the street, police ran behind him. They just got out of the car and just started beating him, man. And I've never seen anything like that before. That stuck with me for a long time. Why would they just beat this unarmed man the way that they did?
And that was here in Opelika?
That was here in Opelika. Man, that stuck with me forever.
So how did that, when you grew up as an adult, how did that impact how you felt toward it and how you interacted with the police?
Well, when we were growing up, we just ran from the police because we didn't want them to do anything, because a lot of times they would just pick at blacks, when I was growing up. So when you saw one, you wouldn't necessarily run, but you wouldn't look, you walk. I mean, it was frightening. It was very frightening. And especially to me, because I've seen that, and the other people say how they just harass them. That was the way of the police officers during the 40s and 50s, so to speak. So you just try to stay out of their way. And I remember we got our very first black police officer, and like I said, 1968, and that was after that. Sometimes, like I said, things have to happen before changes would occur.
Now, I've had not criminal interactions with the Opelika Police Department. I live in Opelika.
Okay. You live in Ward 1? I'm just kidding.
Say one.
The Opelika Police Department is professional, courteous. I haven't had any negative interactions with them, but you know, you can look at me and I'm not the kind of guy that's going to have a problem with the police. They're not generally going to be, you know, on their guard when they come up and talk to me. But so I acknowledge the Opelika Police Department is maybe I'll say they're a professional force. How long was it before, and do you now, when you know, I'm going to assume you don't run from an Opelika police officer anytime you see him now that you've gotten past that. Do you still, do they, I guess possibly you're unique because you are city councilman, they may know you from that role, but do you have, you know, when a local police officer or a highway patrolman interacts with you, do you still feel a little tension? Do you still, is that, you know, sort of moderated?
I don't, you know, I think normally the ones that might feel a little tension would be the younger ones, and of course the ones that's doing something, or in the process of doing something wrong. But I'm just saying, I'm not saying I'm the best person, but when they stop me, I ain't got nothing to worry about, because hopefully I've not done anything. But I will share this with you. When I was selling insurance, I was a police officer in Opelika. That was considered being one that really would harass black residents. And we got to be friends when he started selling insurance with the company that I was with. And he said, George, you know, I just did it because that's what they expected us. I mean, that's what other officers were doing. I really didn't care about doing it, but you know, that's the only way I could be a part of the in crowd. And he started working in the black communities. He just wanted to kind of redeem himself because he realized how wrong he had been. And you know, a lot of things and that's even happening now. We read what police officers do things because that's what others are doing and that's what they're expected to do. I can tell that now their jobs are a lot harder now than it was then because of the change in the way that we live. But I cannot just, and I probably can bring in some that say, well, they're the worst people in the world, most prejudiced, you know. But, you know, I never really experienced that, and no one in my family experienced that. Because my folks say, you know, treat people the way you want to be treated. I never did try to do anything while I would be having an encounter with the police.
You said earlier you had children, right?
Yeah.
How many do you have?
I have 3 boys.
Cool.
One is in Houston, Texas. One is in Little Rock, and one is in Opelika.
How did their experience or upbringing here in Opelika compare or differ from yours? I mean, obviously the obvious, but outside of that, just like.
Well, I had one that made a bad choice, and he had to pay the consequences for it. That's to my middle son. But when I was growing up, we didn't have many choices to make. You know what I'm saying? Drugs were not prevalent. You know, it was just not very many things that you could do to get you in trouble. But now with peer pressure and with the things that the young people, you all have to deal with, it's a lot different than when I was growing up. You know, you had some things to get you in trouble. We didn't have the choices that you had, and he made a bad choice. And all 3 of them went to the military. My oldest son went to the military, and all of them wanted to go, but my middle son, now my oldest son retired out of it, he said it wasn't for him, so he got out. My youngest son, he just retired. He went in at 18 and he retired at like 38. So even though you can teach them all the same, you still have to make your own choices what you choose to do. So the choices, the choices are still there, and it was not because of his color the way, but just what he chose to do, and of course he had to pay the consequences for it. Selling drugs, I ain't gonna say he didn't kill nobody, rob. He decided that was an easy way for him to make money, so he had to pay the consequences.
So, I guess looking back over your lifetime, Food Truck Friday is tomorrow night downtown. I don't know if y'all have ever been to Food Truck Friday. It's a great time. I'm speaking for the Opelika Chamber of Commerce right there. When you go down and you go to events like that, it sometimes even strikes me. I grew up in Homewood, a little town that was predominantly white that sort of broke off from Jefferson County when, started our own school system when Jefferson County decided if they were going to have to integrate, we weren't going to pay for schools anymore. And the county reacted by slashing the school budget by almost 40%. So, I grew up in a fairly segregated community by choice. It was a white bedroom community of the city. But when I go to places like, Food Truck Friday and I see, there's a sizable Hispanic community here in Opelika. You have African Americans, you have whites, everybody's intermingling, and you will see some self-segregation in groups when they pick tables to sit at, but in general, people are walking amongst each other and nobody seems to be really that conscious of who they're standing next to in line to get a burger. When you look at that, does it still strike you that, within our lifetimes, that's so radically different than it was?
Of course, my wife and I talk about it all the time, but I do it with joy to see where we've come from, the progress that we've made. So, and one of the things it might not be your choice, but one of the things we talk about, I would love to see just all interracial marriages where all of a sudden you have one race and you don't have nothing to worry about. That'll never happen. That's that utopian society that we're talking about. You want to have, the different ones, but the progress that we have made, I think is great. But there was a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, but the outcome has been good, I think. Now you talk about, Food Truck Friday, I think is great, but I don't think it should be downtown. I look at the businesses that are downtown that sometimes hurt because of Food Truck Friday. So that's the part. Now, if that was out in the park somewhere, I think it would be great.
That's it. I hadn't even thought about it.
Like if you own a restaurant and you have a food truck.
Yeah, right out. And the weekend is supposed to be your best. Your best Friday night, probably your best night, and you kind of working at a food truck right out there in front of you. You can't park, your customer can't park. It's just, but those are the pros and cons of things.
Do you know if a lot of them stay open?
Because
if I own a restaurant, I wouldn't open on Food Truck Friday.
Well, you want to make what you can. You know what I'm saying? You might not want to have all your employees there at night, but because you're gonna have your loyal customers. They're gonna come if they come to you on Friday night. They're gonna come. And that's just the business aspect of it. So that's why I say you're gonna have pros and cons of everything. Race, businesses, that's just life. That's just life.
That's why he's on the city council.
Sounds like it's time to invest in a
favorite spot.
What's that?
I say, sounds like it's time for those restaurants to invest in a food truck more than anything.
That's right.
Do you have a favorite place to eat in town?
I like the Irish bread club.
Oh, okay.
That is good.
What about a place that's not downtown? A place that's not downtown.
Not downtown. Not many places that's not downtown.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
Other than in Tiger Town, of course you got Tiger Town. That's about it.
Do you remember back in when businesses were still segregated? Could you speak, about the black business population of restaurants or clothing stores or things like that? Or was there any black owned or minority owned businesses during that time that really thrived in the black community?
There was a couple of drugstores or restaurants that probably did well. And matter of fact, now Dr. Darden opened up his own drugstore, so to speak. So it did well while he was here, but then of course that it ended at his demise. So but four is just maybe 2, 3.
Do you have that experience or that memory of? I don't know if a lot of people went out to eat. Like we say that back in 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's probably a different meaning to it. But do you have any memory of going out as a family and?
Never.
Never.
Now me and my older siblings now would go, but for mom, dad, and the children, never. I was probably, I would say 10, 11, 12 before I had my first piece of sliced bread. They made they cooked everything, all the bread, everything. It was nothing for you to go out for. You go to the store to get what it would take for you to make a meal. That you don't go to the store to get a meal. You go to the store to get what it would take to make a meal. That's just the way it was.
Do you think that was across the board between all races during that time? I know for a large part it probably was.
Yeah.
But
I remember, the first Jacks that came to Opelika, man. That was it.
So
it was just like I said, it was just a mill town is what it was. It was just a big mill town. You had your Pepper, you had your Opelika manufacturing, and you had a couple of others, but it was just a hard-working manufacturing town.
So I should have asked this much, much earlier. Can you tell us about your parents? Were they from Opelika?
They were from Opelika. My mother probably had a 3rd grade education, but I wouldn't trade her for the world. My father was raised by his relatives, which means we know very little about his side. Wouldn't trade him for the world. He was the type that believed he would work and take. We had 9 children. It's 9 of us. He believed the man should work, the lady should stay home and take care of the family. She did not work until probably all of us was probably in high school. I mean, me and my younger brother was in high school before she decided to go out and try to seek employment. And they did well. They bought a house, they had a car. When they both died, they had accumulated enough that we were glad to get what we could get, but they knew how to, and that was a good thing. They just knew how to work together, and I'm sure they did what they had to do. But they had values that you don't find today.
What did your father do for work?
He worked in a roofing company most of the time. That's what he started when they were putting tar on the top of the roofs and that hot stuff. He did that, and the company he worked for eventually went into Opelika Welding, where they started making different things. But he worked with George man for all of his life, and he did well. He believed in taking care of his family. And I guess that's why I've been married for 50-some years too, because of that's just when you get married, you stay married. That's what I put. That's how I grew up.
With this just being a mill town, how many other kinds of jobs were outside of the mill, or was that even really a thing?
Now, what's his name? Orr started the cassette tape deal. That was in
J.H. Orr.
Yeah. What year was that?
It was after World War II.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
He actually stole that technology from the Germans.
Yeah. You remember where he had his shop? They had a German camp there.
Yeah. That a camp.
Prisoner of war camp in Opelika. Yeah.
Yes.
So that and it was just you maybe work for the city in sanitation or something like that. It was not very much, other than the textile industries. And some of the ones, even in Opelika, worked in the textile industry in the valley area, but most of them worked in the textile industry. And of course, I think in probably 62, 63, Uniroyal came to Opelika, and that was a big game changer for Opelika.
That was Uniroyal, was that since, Pepperell was segregated in 62, 63. Was Uniroyal segregated when they started hiring, or they?
I'm trying to, I think they may have been segregated from the beginning, so to speak, but as kids start graduating in the early, 64, 65, they start getting out there good jobs. But initially, I really can't remember, the first year they started hiring blacks, but I don't know if they hired blacks when they first came to Opelika.
Now you mentioned John Herbert Orr. He owned the local radio station, WJHO.
Yeah.
When I was growing up in Birmingham, we had white stations and we had black stations.
Same thing here.
And was there a black station here in town?
No, not a black station per se, but they would have a time for black. To play black, DJs to come in, and normally that was just like on Sunday morning they would do that, but there was never. And of course, we tried to pick up a station out of Columbus, but we had transistor radios to where you couldn't pick them up too well. No, and there's never really been. Now, Fuller bought out, I think, with WJHO, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that happened sometime like it was after I was here from 80 to 85, 86, 87, and I think it was after that.
Yeah, because our mayor Gary Fuller had a part in that as well. Before it's just other industries, it wasn't anything. We're just a textile town, so to speak.
You had brought up the prison award camp. I'm assuming you wouldn't be old enough to know fully about it, but were you told anything about it?
No, not really.
Okay.
I just know once they finally, when this band, they took those barracks, so to speak, and they moved them around Opelika and made homes out of them. But I can't remember anything about that.
I was just curious, because I was like, well, that's last.
Yeah.
There's a lot of towns around Alabama that had Italian and German prisoner war camps, and now when you go back and ask people about it, it's a gap in Alabama history.
It is.
Because
look like they just didn't want to record it or something. I don't know why.
One of the professors in our department wrote an article about it. Actually,
which one?
I don't know. It was down the hallway. There are too many professors.
But there was one here. There was one in Ozark. There was one over on Reform. They were scattered all over the state.
Right.
And they allowed the prisoners of war to go out into the community to work every day, and they had they interacted. But as soon as the war was over, and they removed the camps.
I was told that they would let them go downtown.
Yeah. It was out at where Route 51 crosses the interstate. It was right there. At Camp Opelika.
I got that by Steel Street, I think.
Yeah.
There's a story about it in the Haunted Auburn Opelika book, because it's haunted.
What do you hope for the future of Opelika? If you had to distill it into a couple sentences.
I'm just looking forward to progress, man. I'm trying to keep up with the changes of the world so we can be prevalent here in Opelika. Nothing. We know that if we are to prevail or to be competitive, you got to have good jobs, good education, good schools, so to speak, and affordable housing. And those are the things that you have to work on. That's anywhere. If if we want to be competitive. And those are the things that I think we have to work on. Good schools, education, and affordable housing. What's affordable? I cannot explain to you what affordable housing is.
Not what it is now.
I don't consider that, but they say, whatever you can afford, that's affordable.
Yeah.
Wasn't it last week I told you?
But there's not a demand for what a lot of people, the supply is not there for the demand of a lot of people because, we live in a capitalistic society and people gonna build what they can make the most money on. And then they can sell it. If they're selling, they're gonna keep building 3, 4, 5 $500,000 houses, period.
It's depressing, but yeah.
I mean, they're making the new condos in downtown Auburn that's like for millionaires, basically.
I'm telling you, that's the way it is. Matter of fact, they're in my ward. This man bought. I don't know if y'all been reading about the Taylors that they're gonna build in Opelika. Big thing, They said, why are you putting it here? We can't afford it. They said they feel like somebody can. That's why they're building it.
So there's a lot of discussion in Auburn right now with all the 5-story multi-purpose buildings going up in downtown. And Auburn is losing its small town flavor, and the city is changing in ways that. In the nature of Auburn is that it's a lot of people that don't live in Auburn that are getting the most of it. So people that come back to Auburn for a weekend want it to be like it was in 1963. But there is a change in the flavor of the city of Auburn, especially that downtown area. Do you ever worry that Opelika might lose what makes it Opelika? That it's gonna, you talked about Tiger Town, that's not in downtown, but it certainly changed the way that Opelikans live. Do you ever worry that Opelika is just, you're going to wake up one day and you're going to say, this doesn't feel like Opelika anymore?
Well, not unless we get a big university.
Okay, that's a fair answer. That
happens, let me know. Don't come hiring.
Because Auburn is a university town. That's what they're going to cater to. Period. That's where the money's coming from, and that's it is a college town. It used to be a small college town, but now it's not anymore.
But when you were growing up, this was a mill town.
That's what I'm saying. It's not anymore.
There's no mill here now.
That's what I'm saying. So if we just had marinated in our failure, so to speak, or however, then we wouldn't have looked for other avenues. And what people got to understand in Auburn is it will never ever be what it used to be. Never. The part that's growing is the university. So that's who they're going to cater to.
There was one thing I didn't mention that I find really interesting about Opelika now. When I mentioned Food Truck Fridays, is you had Hispanics, whites, African Americans. But I also, walking up and down the streets, heard a lot of Korean. There's a sizable Korean population.
Well, you start with Kia and all of their all the companies that furnishes parts and to make that car, they're back this way. So they, like I said, they're gonna come where they have good schools, good job, and affordable housing, and they just kind of matriculate here to Opelika. And same thing with Auburn, I guess. They companies don't normally go to Auburn because I guess they don't want to compete with the university. They can go to towns around there. Their industrial area is not probably what they want it to be, but that's the university.
And as Opelika moves forward, do you think the NAACP is still going to have because that is what we're supposed to be asking. Do you think the NAACP is still going to have an important role to fill here in the city and in the county?
I think they will have a role, but I think it will depend on the leadership. You just got to have good leadership in order to endure. But I think they will always have a role because we would never reach that utopian society that we all want. It's going to always be some injustice, some inequalities. So, and a lot of times that's not racial. There are some whites that treat whites bad. There's some blacks that treat blacks bad. That's where they need someone. They need a voice, especially in housing and things of that nature. You get your different housing areas, and the owners don't want to do what they should do to keep them up, and they're just overcharging them for what they're doing, and they need a voice, and the NAACP can be that voice as well. I think they're dealing with Western Crossing and Auburn now because of the problems that they're having in that area. So there will always be a need, but it would depend on the leadership. If they keep a good president, then I think that they will be here for a while. I don't see anything taking that place yet.
Well, it's been 114 years, so yeah. I think it's now one of the, if not the oldest civil rights.
It is. I think it is.
Okay.
Sometimes you might have to change your names. No, I don't think they would do that, but they just got to keep good leadership, and good dedicated people that understand that there are still some changes that need to be made. Not necessarily changes, but some corrections that need to be made.
Does anybody have any other questions for Mr. Allen?
Trying to think of one.
What do you think of Hugh Freeze,
What's that?
the new Auburn football coach?
We'll find out later.
It's okay to say we prefer Cadillac. Most of us do too.
No, I wouldn't say that. I'm kind of a realist. I think he's in the best position now. If Freeze if he doesn't do well, then Cadillac could be there. But sometimes you need some experience, especially in the SEC. It's a little different.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little different.
I was worried that they were going to give him the job, and he hadn't even been an offensive coordinator.
That's what I'm saying. I was excited to see what but I don't think he was ready.
Lori, take the football things off the record.
Now that's my personal opinion, and
It's fine. No one's gonna.
had nothing to do with the race. I just felt like he wasn't one right now,
Oh, yeah.
and I don't know if Freeze won, but I just feel like he was because of the experience. Experience is important, especially in the SEC.
Mm-hmm. Or are they saying, he has a track record of beating Bama. That's all you really
That's all.
Yeah.
I grew up in Auburn, and so I always growing up, I would hear about, of course, football and school rivalry of Opelika, and it's still, of course, extremely prevalent with Opelika, still in high school. Do you happen to know any bit about that history a little bit?
No, well, that came a little after my time because we had a rivalry with Drake High and Darden High, but that was a big game. But of course now it's not anymore because that used to be the last game of the year. Everybody looked for, but because of the money who got involved in high school, they play. It's just another game now. We got to try to make the playoffs. We got to get this. It's not what it used to be, and those are the changes that we have to deal with. But at one time, it was the game. You would have to almost park in Opelika and walk to Duck Sanford Park to get it.
You still kind of have to park away from Duck Sanford Tuesday, walk all the way over there. It's always insane.
Almost park in Opelika and just walk to the game. But that has changed, so Auburn, Opelika, Alabama, Auburn game changed, of course. And just we were talking about a person that said this is not right. Pat Dye said, why do we got to go to you all the time?
Mm-hmm.
He was the one to make that change. People say, yeah, you're right. They ought to be able to come down here just like we come up there. But for years, it just was the norm. We play in Birmingham every year. you get the majority of the income, and maybe that was okay when our teams were when we lost you 15 years in a row, maybe. But now we got a team that we feel is good. You gonna have to come to us. You don't remember when they all played in just Burrell?
No.
I mean, that was it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I actually went to.
Bear Bryant said, Bear Bryant said he was not coming down to this kowtow.
I went to Alabama games at Legion Field, and it was never even when we were the home team.
That's what you never were the home team.
Nope, and it was. And Alabama at one time was playing 4 games a year at Legion Field.
Yeah,
And that was when Brian Denny Stadium held 38,000.
Yeah. And Pat Dye said no.
Don't look at me like
we don't
that.
change.
It's okay. I went to football games at Legion Field too. It was for UAB, but I was the last year before they got to the new one, and I was like, all right, fine.
Well, so Curry started your football program, didn't he?
Who was it?
What's his name?
Bill Curry.
Bill Curry.
Okay. Well, Bill Curry started it, and then the president decided to kill it, and then 4 years later bring it back because it turned out it wasn't popular to take away football.
Then they got good, and then the Board of Regents, who had no UAB graduates on the Board of Regents, they were all Tuscaloosa graduates, decided, we'll just shut that off. Let me ask you one question in closing. This project is about the early years of the NAACP in Opelika. Is there anybody you think we should talk to?
I'm telling you, we'll do this again.
Okay.
And the people that I've talked, of course, I have my brother here, and anyone else that was part of it years ago, I'll try to make sure they're here too.
Okay.
I don't think I've done you justice.
Oh, you've been.
I argue that.
We would all argue with that. But I think Dr. Hebert will probably reach out to you.
Yeah, just tell them I'll be willing to do it. We can do it here, or anywhere else. But I will make sure that I can get you some more voices, some more memories about the local NAACP.
We appreciate it a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
When this quarter just started, I suppose.
Yes.
We're about 4 weeks in.
Yeah,
Okay,
about
so
5
within the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll make sure that we.
Okay.
do
Yes,
that.
sir.
Before we close, can I just I'm just gonna ask you one more time. This is okay that we recorded it?
No, you didn't ask me.
Don't mess with me, man.
I guess I got to sign, huh?
Yeah. You can just sign on there with your finger. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Man, you said the 3 boys, and I was like, my poor mother, she went through the same thing.
Yeah.
Got the one problem child in the middle, we're like, all right, it'll be fine.
Yeah. Always.
Let me get this. I gotta make sure it's done right, man.
Oh, you the official paper keeper person?
Apparently.